Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Back in Business podcast. I'm Rob Miller.
And I'm Stephen Wiseglass.
How are you doing?
Good, thank you. And you?
All right. We've had some good feedback since the last video we did. Seemed to go down quite well.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I think we'll do quite a few more of these.
Indeed. Well, today we've got a very special guest on. A good friend of the show and of Inquester, Mr. David Mintz is going to be joining us.
The property guru.
The property guru. Should we bring him in then?
Yeah, go for it.
Here's David.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Thank you. How are you?
Very well. Yeah, all good.
Good. So, David, welcome. You are director at Normie Co, the best estate agent in North Manchester, if not the country.
I'm no arguments from me. Yeah, carry on. I like to hear this stuff.
How have you been? How have you coped with lockdown and COVID and all that?
It's been a bit of a process, hasn't it? I think anybody that has got small kids running around the house and trying to balance that with work and everything else, lockdown has been a real challenge. It's interesting. It's probably one of the things that when you think about where you live, so obviously that's something we get to deal with quite a lot on a day-to-day basis being an estate agent, but a lot of the feedback that we get from people is that this period of lockdown has given them sort of a chance to reevaluate where they live and how they work and whether or not they can actually work effectively from home. So it's been a challenge. There's been some great bits of it because everybody's got to spend more time with their kids and help out with the schooling, which has got its let's put it this way, it's got its good sides and it's got its bad sides, but there's been a lot of nice stuff about it as well, and it's probably given some people time to sort of hit the pause button and reflect on their businesses, their lives, and maybe change a bit of direction.
I agree. It definitely slows you down a little bit, doesn't it? There was a period during lockdown where I was kind of like, I quite like this. It's nice to slow down and the stress is reduced a little bit.
Well, I suppose when the weather's good, and you've got nowhere else to be particularly, and all the urgency of life is it was kind of sucked out of things for a while, and it felt like, that feeling of goodwill that you get around Christmas, where everybody says, "Hey, don't worry, don't rush. It'll wait till we get back in." That's what kind of started to happen, and people became better human beings as a result of it because they just stopped for a minute.
Yeah, didn't last long though, did it?
And the weather was good.
The weather, we were blessed with the weather. I'd hate to think of what lockdown in bad weather looks like, and hopefully we won't get to experience that this winter.
So you guys were obviously allowed to open earlier than most of the businesses. Must have been pretty tough when there was literally no business going on whatsoever. I guess it gave you the opportunity to sort of work on the business rather than in the business, or think about that.
So I think like a lot of industries, I mean, we've got the technology that enables us to work from home. But there was a period of time where sales, particularly, and selling was just not something that you could do, or you could do effectively. It's not what the public wanted to hear from their agents and from businesses locally. What they want to hear is they wanted more support. So they wanted to know that we're there with them, going through this thing with them. So we've had to sort of pivot during that time to entirely different activities. So one of the challenges that the businesses have, and I know that you and I spoke about this, Rob, which may or may not have kind of played into you guys starting this, but one of the things is, how do you stay in front of your core audience and your customers at a time when they don't need to buy your products? So it's easy when they need you, they're there, and you've got an active audience, but where you've also got that time where selling to people is not appropriate, then how do you deal with it? So one of the ways that we deal with it is that we as estate agents, we see ourselves very much as part of the communities that we serve. So we're very much in touch with what's happening locally. That could be, down to developments or, business structures in the area. So, for instance, at the moment, there's this massive effort here in Prestwich to get Prestwich reopened. So we focused on that. But during lockdown, my staff had to learn to do something else. Most of them were furloughed. And Nigel, who lives in an area called Unsworth, we have a community group there called Love BL9, and he went from valuing houses one week to baking cakes the next. So he's an avid baker, and he decided that's what he's going to do. So he bakes cakes, and people have been tuning in to watch it. Now, we're not selling to those people, but it's that same friendly, familiar face that is there in front of people, trying to help them. Different bits and pieces we've been doing, so just kind of signposting basic services to people. So where can you, who's delivering? So we all don't want to go out to shops during the height of lockdown. What do you do? So we would sort of do a list of all the services that we knew were still operating, who's still delivering to households. It's helping small businesses, if you like, find an audience and still reach the same sort of people. So our job went from being estate agents to being more sort of community support roles, where we were there, we were still visible, and we were still reaching out to members of the public, but we weren't attempting to sell them anything, which it was a lovely thing to be able to do, to be honest.
Great. It's really good. I remember when we first set up, one piece of advice I was given was that always make sure that you're seen, because you never know when someone might need your services. And I think it's just keeping the exposure up, and that's kind of what you've done. And I suppose that's kind of what we're doing as well.
It's too. I mean, there's a lot of businesses that have not been communicating with the public at all. So they've understood that it's inappropriate to, ram sales down their throat. So okay, that's one thing, but to miss the opportunity to still stay a part of things, people will remember those companies that did try and put the community at the center of their work, and they'll forget the people that just suddenly disappeared for 3 months. And then there's plenty of businesses opening up now that are going, hey, we're back in business, come, we're back, we're open, come and get a load of us. And the public remember who they've seen and who they haven't.
Yeah. So just going a little bit drier for a second, what does the future hold, do you think, for the property market and the economy in general from what you've seen so far?
That's the $6 million question, Rob. Okay, so sorry?
I had to ask it though.
You have to ask, you get to ask the questions. I'm going to have to answer this one. So I think we should look at what's happening today, because we can obviously tell you about what the market's doing at the moment, and perhaps try and predict what's going to happen as we get through autumn and into winter, which I think is probably going to be a bit more challenging time. So if you have a look at what the government did at the beginning of lockdown, one of the first things that they did was they reacted very quickly to the panic, if you like, that was likely to break free from your average Joe that sat at home watching those daily press briefings. So this is, I have to stress that what we're going through now is very, very different, and it's being managed in a very different way to the financial crisis that everybody went through in 2008. In 2008, what you had was pictures of pensioners lining up outside Northern Rock. And if there's one thing that the British public feed off, it really is the media mood. So if the media are positive, then the public become positive. If the media are blasé about something, the public tend to sort of become more relaxed about something. And again, if they're negative, that really drives it downward as well. So we're all very interested as to what's happening in the housing market at all times. It's a bit of a national obsession. So the question you've just asked me is a very common question. And what happened in 2008 was that the media allowed that public to, the government allowed that panic to set in, and it allowed major banks to topple. There was no massive financial assistance dished out to your average person sat at home. This time round, the government seemed to understand that it would be the worst thing in the world if they allowed that to happen again. So very early on, you saw the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, get out there in front of the cameras and start to offer great dispensation. So you had the grant schemes that came out for small businesses. Bigger businesses got a much so people in the hospitality industry, for instance, up to £25,000 worth of a grant, which it's a drop in the ocean in the scheme of things, but it's a big initial help. They then brought out the furlough scheme, which helped tons of businesses. I mean, it was a real lifeline, that scheme. And so your unemployment figures, the result of that is that the quicker you get that out to the public, the more calm the marketplace remains. And so you didn't have this negative reaction from the markets. You didn't see stock market crashes, the likes of which you would have seen sort of 10, 12 years ago. And I think that the average man on the street actually during lockdown didn't have less money in their pockets because they were given mortgage holidays. So everybody's you can have up to 6 months on an average residential mortgage. All banks are giving it. It doesn't affect your credit rating. So these are things that help members of the public to feel that somebody knows what they're doing, that there is a bit of support. And yes, it will never be enough, but it's enough just to keep things going. And one of the things that they've done fairly recently, as you'll know, Rob, is that they have offered a stamp duty dispensation just maybe 10 days ago. And that basically allows anybody purchasing up to 500,000 to pay nothing on stamp duty up until the end of March 2021. So these are efforts that have had a great positive effect. So to answer your question, because these measures have been put in place, the resilience of the property market, particularly locally, has been much better than anybody ever expected. So at the beginning of lockdown, it's easy to say, oh, it's all going to be doom and gloom. But in actual fact, the past 7-8 weeks since lockdown was lifted for agents and the property market, it's probably been the best market we've known for sort of 10, 20 years almost. It's really is a boom time.
And you're seeing the mortgage offers come in for their properties once they're agreeing as well.
So and that's another one of the facets, if you like. It's another one of the challenges, Stephen, is that I could agree a sale on your house today, but it's the question of whether or not that buyer is going to get it valued up at the amount that you've agreed to sell it for, they've agreed to buy it for. And so what we're seeing is that valuers, in some cases, they were sort of covering their backs a little bit. But I think the attitude at the bank is that they want to lend the money. And so therefore the instructions that are filtering through to the valuers is not to, don't kill the deal unnecessarily, work with the customer. There will always be a smattering of down valuation here and there. But generally speaking, as long as you're able to demonstrate to the surveyors that are going out to these properties that in actual fact, the person buying your house is not just a one-off random offer that you've received, and it's part of a wider marketing strategy that you've got, and you've actually seen maybe 5 or 6 buyers come along who all would offer roughly similar amounts. It gives the valuers confidence that actually there is a ready market for your property. And so agents that do their job really well will be going out of their way to communicate that to surveyors when they come into contact with them.
And you say you're going through this very busy period. Do you think that's just the market because there was a void period and it's just coming back to align? So all those deals that were going through pre-COVID and the new stuff that would have come on during COVID but has not yet hit, well, and now those inquiries are now filtering through, rather than it being oh, I want to sell my house. I've decided to sell my house because of COVID, or I'm buying because it's just coming out of COVID.
So there are what we'd call COVID instructions. The classic scenario is, you've spent 10 weeks inside the house with your dog, 3 kids, and a wife. Now you're going to find out. It's a learning experience. You're going to find out rather quickly who you like and who you don't in that scenario. So if you've come out of this the wrong side of it, we're seeing a lot of people that are actually downsizing, and typically what they're saying is, we now need 2 houses because we've spent 10 weeks together. We've decided we don't like each other, so we're going our separate ways.
Yeah.
Or you've got the exact opposite. You've spent 10 weeks with somebody, and now you're expecting the pitter-patter of tiny feet in 9 months' time. So if that's the case, because that's happened as well, people literally have had time to get themselves into interesting scenarios. So if you're expecting a baby, you're going to want more room, and if you want more room, then you want to move. The other thing is that time at home has given you, so the weather's been good, so you've got, Stephen, I know you've got a fantastic garden. So you're when you look at your garden, it's brilliant for lockdown because your kids have got plenty of room to run around there. But if you lived in a house, say that your last house where you wanted that extra garden space, that period of lockdown where you're forced to use what you've got, you both see you can see the good sides of it, but you can also see the negatives. So you'll rush out and want to buy stuff. So I think you've seen a lot of activity that has been a result of lockdown, and it's we are, one thing I love about the British public is that we don't take anything lying down. So if we're told we can't do something, our natural reaction is to try and push against that slightly. So the minute the lockdown was relaxed, people then rush out. So you saw those, the queues of people outside Primark. So the property market's no different. We all talk about moving. So you will have those situations that are peculiar to only this time, and then you've got your regular moves as well. To be honest, whilst the market activity remains the way that it is, it's probably a good time if you were thinking about selling and you were sort of not quite sure. Now is a better time. You asked the question earlier, what does can we envisage a time where this might run out? Well, I'll be honest with you, the prognosis for winter doesn't look great. So if you listen to what the pundits are saying and you read what's going on, all the furlough schemes come to an end in October. You've then got, by then, bounce back loans will be a distant memory. The grant money would have been spent several times over. You've got mortgage holidays, which for that second period of mortgage holidays then going to come to an end in October as well. So what you're really creating is this perfect kind of, it's the perfect storm where in actual fact then going into winter, where doctors are predicting that in any event, regardless of what COVID's doing, we're more susceptible to stuff like colds and flu. So if we are going to get a substantial second wave, it may well come at that time. So all these things together don't bode well for any kind of market. It's not just the housing market, but it's for all of us and for the UK economy in general. So this period of calm that we've got now and opportunity might not be here forever. It's hard to predict what's going to happen, but we all envisage this Christmas being one of the harder Christmases that families are going to have to budget for.
David, I know you do quite a lot of charitable work as well, and one area I'm quite interested in. Obviously, charities are going to undoubtedly struggle because people have got less money, or people are likely to have less money, and you kind of wonder what the future holds for some of these charities, and whether they're actually thinking about, well, what can we do differently rather than our bog standard fundraising efforts. What's your experience of that?
So you're right. So you guys are not shy of promoting charities either. You do some fantastic work, and these charities that are worth supporting. In the best of times, they're even harder to gain support right now. I think that the biggest challenge for charities as a whole is that they've got that challenge of keeping in front of people as well. Now, when the world is struggling with the reality of COVID, it's hard for these charities to continue knocking on the door and saying, hang on, we're struggling as well. So you've got charities for any number of causes, but let's take, for instance, a cancer charity. The challenges that they're going through at the moment, you can open the paper and see stories of people that have not been able to have the tests that they need or the treatment that they need. There have been cancer wards, children's cancer wards, that have been emptied. So they've sent the patients home because they needed to make space for COVID patients to come in. So we're living in a time where if their resources aren't squeezed, then they're severely depleted, and it's not business as normal either in the treatment that they offer, but also in fundraising. One of the challenges for fundraising, though, is that you can't hold normal events in the same way that you would do. Now, what we're doing now is a really great way of communicating. There's nobody in the country that hasn't been on an online video conference recently. So kids have been doing it with school teachers. Charities are also starting to use it as well. So they've had quiz nights and they've had all sorts of stuff which help to sort of really, they're not going to raise substantial amounts off it, because right now your average Joe doesn't have that kind of disposable income. But what they're doing is they're able to stay in front of their target audience. So I'm not in a position to give advice to charities necessarily, but my advice from a business perspective, and most charities need to market themselves in the same way, is that find a way to stay in front of your target audience, find a way to stay visible, find a way to keep your message going, that in actual fact there are people that still need support, that will still need support coming out of COVID. There are plenty of charities that have experienced regular donors cancelling direct debits because they don't know what the future holds for them financially. So the first thing that you tend to do is you cut off all the things that you don't absolutely need. So gym membership, TV subscriptions in some cases, although with my kids that could be classified as an essential service. Yeah. But with, for some people, unfortunately, charities have been the victim of these cost-cutting measures that have gone in place. So I think really the challenge is to find new ways to stay in front of those audiences and to engage with them, and to be offering them something that isn't necessarily just a begging letter, that is highlighting the work that they do. One of the local charities that you'll be aware of, you'll both be aware of, I think, Rob, particularly. But if you look at a social care charity like the Fed locally in Manchester, their marketing team is particularly good at sort of keeping the positive stories going. So, more recently they've enabled older people in old age homes to see their loved ones through a partition of glass. Now that to me and you might sound daft, but to people that support these charities and to the users and to the members of those charities, this is essential work that they're doing, and this is it delivers tremendous value. So I think just try and use technology to your best advantage, really, but try and use it in the softest way possible to reach your audience and to keep reminding them that you're going to need them to stay in touch with you for a long period of time, not just now.
Yeah, the maintenance of the engagement between you and your target audience.
That's it.
Well, we're coming to the end of the recording, and it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I think it's safe to say we could probably chat for another hour.
Are you going to have me back for parts 2, 3, 4, and 5?
I think we might have to at some point. Yeah. But no, it's been great. Thanks so much for coming on and giving us a bit of your time, and it's been very informative, very useful, and we look forward to having you on again sometime.
My pleasure, anytime. And thank you for the work that you're doing in sort of keeping local businesses front and center. It's really, really important.
Great. Thanks, David. Much
Thank you,
appreciated.
David.
Bye-bye.
And thanks everybody for watching.